Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today in the Locker Room. I'm Alan Locher, and I grew up watching both As the World Turns and Guiding Light. As I was stuck home in quarantine, I realized that I was missing the shows that I grew up watching, and thought some of you may be feeling the same way too. My guest today, Bell Bundy, made her stage debut in the Radio City Christmas Spectacular at the age of 9, and has originated the roles of Tina in Ruthless off-Broadway, Amber Von Tussle in Hairspray, and Elle Woods in Legally Blonde on Broadway, which she received a Tony nomination for. For you Guiding Light fans, and for me, she played Mara Lewis, the daughter of Reba and Josh, one of our favorite couples. Laura just released her first single, Get It Girl You Go, off her upcoming album, Women of Tomorrow. I'm so excited to have Laura here in the Locker Room today. Please welcome Laura Bell Bundy.
Hi.
Laura. Hi.
Good
Thanks
to
for
see
being
you.
here.
It's my pleasure.
I told you, first of all, thank you for giving me a sneak peek at the entire album. It's phenomenal.
Hold on.
And I think,
hey, Alan.
What?
I'm so sorry. My mother started calling me and it clicked the sound. So I don't know what you said the last 30 seconds.
I've had that happen when I'm hosting. The phone rings on the computer. I said I was so excited that you gave me a sneak peek at the whole album because it's phenomenal.
Thank you. Yes.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. But we'll get to the album. I wanted to start at the beginning. Radio City Music Hall. What do you remember about your stage debut?
Well, I was 9 years old and it was the Christmas Spectacular. And, for a kid, okay, there were camels in the show. There were, goats and sheep because we had the nativity scene. So we had all the animals for the nativity scene. There was like a zoo downstairs. There was ice skating in the show. So they had this like fake ice stuff that was like this plastic with like almost like a Vaseline on top of it that the ice skaters would skate on. So that was fascinating. There were little people in the show. So I'm thinking I'm surrounded by Santa and the elves all day, every day. I shared my floor of my dressing room was the same floor as Santa Claus's dressing room. And, and then also I was in Liza Minnelli's dressing room that she stayed in at Radio City. So as someone, okay, I'll just tell you right here, this may sound a little bit off, but I was like a gay man trapped in the body of John Benet. And
I know a few gay men who would freak out to be in Liza Minnelli's dressing room.
So the very first concert I ever saw was just before I got the Radio City Music Hall. Liza Minnelli was performing at Radio City Music Hall. So my mom took me to the show because she loved Liza. And we're sitting in the front row. I'm so excited. And then I get this part and they tell me this was her dressing room and I'm just freaking out. And I was already obsessed with Judy Garland too. So, so that was like a wonderland for me, that show.
Oh.
And that place is huge. And we used to run all over the entire theater. I mean, on our breaks, it was like 3-4 shows a day. Sometimes it was a lot of shows. I don't know if the child labor unions were called, but I would like run all over the theater, and like there's all of these really cool like pathways at Radio City Music Hall and ways to get from backstage to the house, and all these different levels and floors. And it was so much fun for us. There was 2 other kids in the show. Well, there was actually 2 sets of 3 kids. So there was another little girl and 2 boys that were secondary cast. And we would just,
not bad for your first theater, really,
Yeah.
like your stage.
Oh my God. There's no way there to go but down.
Yeah, seriously. Radio City is like the epitome of where you want to be. So when did you first realize you could sing?
I don't know, because I was so young that I don't remember there being a point where I wasn't singing. There was always music on in the house. My grandfather was a singer. He was also a radio DJ in the 40s and 50s, and then he transitioned to on-air news, on-camera broadcasting. But he, he was back in the day with, he trained Nick Clooney, who was Rosemary Clooney's brother, in radio, gave him his first radio job. And they're from Maysville, Kentucky, so they were friendly with Rosemary. And how they did music at the time is like they would have the musicians actually come in to the radio station to sing, or they would be broadcasting from like nightclubs and things like that. And so my grandfather was also a singer. I always heard music on all the time. My mom always had music on. And I was like in my, I went to a dance school called Town and Village School of Dance in Paris, Kentucky, which is in Bourbon County, which is a dry county.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's sort of bizarre and ironic. But I went, I apparently don't remember this, but I had started dance class at 2.5. And according to my dance teacher, I was singing every time they turned the music on for us to dance. I was singing the songs. So she had said this to my mom, and my mom was like, yay, I want a singer. So my mom like put me in like singing classes, and also I was taking piano. And the next thing you know, I'm doing these little competitions, dance competitions at 5 years old, where I'm singing at the same time. And then I was entered into a pageant when I was 5. I do remember singing at 4, but I was entered to a pageant at 5 where I did sing, and I won a new car.
Really?
Yes.
At that age? That is insane.
It was so ugly. And I remember thinking at 5 years old, that's a piece of car. And like, Mom, we don't have to drive this, right? But yeah. So I don't. It was always a part of my life was music.
And what type of music did you listen to growing up? Like, did you have who would you say your biggest musical influences? I mean, was Judy? Like that type of?
Definitely. So I think I was really influenced by what my mom and my grandfather were listening to. My first song I ever remember hearing on the radio was Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers' Island in the Stream.
Love that.
Yeah. So Islands in the Stream was my first memory of hearing a song in a car. But I always remember there was like the record player was going, and whether it was my mom listening to Linda Ronstadt, or I was obsessed with movie musicals growing up. So Wizard of Oz and Sound of Music and Singing in the Rain, and a lot of what has influenced this particular album I was listening to. And then my dad was from Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And
these names are killing me.
Well, if you look up Muscle Shoals, Alabama, you will see that Fame Studios was there, and a lot of the best soul records were recorded at Fame Studios. So like Sam Cooke, When a Man Loves a Woman, Aretha Franklin, some of her songs were there. Mavis Staples had recorded there as well. And the rhythm section of there was like the main rhythm section team that was at the studio that would play on all these records were the guys my dad went to high school with. So my dad was listening to this music. So there was also this sort of influence of soul into my vernacular. But yeah, and of course, again, I loved listening to musicals, and loved country music too. I have a pretty wide, a nicely balanced musical palette.
Well, that's interesting, because I think you could tell that from the album, because you bring so many influences into that. But I mean, speaking of stage and movie musicals, you just celebrated on August 15th, the 18th anniversary of your Broadway debut in Hairspray. I mean, what do you remember, 18 years ago, taking that stage opening night?
I remembered I had less wrinkles. It was very.
I mean, Amber Von Tussle was in high school, right?
Right. Amber Von Tussle was like 16. I was 21 when we opened on Broadway, and I was the youngest adult in the cast at that time. So they're all older than me. Just in case anybody's wondering.
Who played your mom in that again?
Linda Hart. God, she was good. Ugh.
Yeah.
She was such a great Velma. You just loved to hate her. She was so good. And really to this day is like, your mother, it's your mother calling. She leaves me a message. You haven't called me. How's my grandson? And she'll email me and literally sign her mother. And
that's what I loved. I mean, all of you on the anniversary, like everybody, I mean, on social media, just the love, you could feel the love that everybody has for each other and for that experience.
Yes, that was it. We knew we were a part of something that was really special and important. We knew the message was important. We knew the comedy was good, and we knew the music was fantastic. And it was quirky, and it wasn't sappy, and it was a little bit of John Waters' weirdness. It had all the elements, and even like down, the choreography was fantastic, even down to like the set design was poppy and fun. And you could take a child to it and not feel like you couldn't explain something, and then an adult could go to it and be really moved and leave thinking about things. And it was just special.
It should really reopen because the message is so important today. Like,
yes,
we're dealing with this on a daily basis, that it's like the message of Hairspray, I could just explode that, the love in that show.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that cast, like, we felt that. I knew that I was like, this is going to be one of the most amazing experiences of my life, regardless of the fact that it was my very first Broadway show. We all had a feeling. And when it hit the way it hit, selling out immediately, we weren't surprised. I think sometimes you are like, oh, wow. But this was like, of course, because we all kind of had this feeling, and we became very close and are still close today. I think for many of us, it was like the beginning of our careers sort of taking off. And so we know the friendships that we formed were prior to successes that we had, which tend to be the strongest friendships.
That's really nice. Well, and then you go on to your next role, and it's a leading role playing Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. I mean, what were you daunted at first? Like, I mean, I know that's what you aim for as a lead role, but I mean, when it is, Laura Bell Bundy in Legally Blonde.
I knew it was a big responsibility. I took it very seriously. I mean, I was fully committed and off book and memorized the songs and worked really hard and wore pink every day.
Well, book for coming from, Guiding Light's got to be easy to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, Guiding Light was great training ground for me. And I tell everybody that, the amount of pages that we would have to memorize in a day and the amount of scenes we were doing, that was half of the entire script of Legally Blonde. So, I could learn that in 4 days, right? But, so it was such a great, Guiding Light really was. And also I had started out as a stage actor where things are a little bit like bigger and heightened. And then doing Guiding Light allowed me to see the realism in my work and to bring in everything in a more intimate way that I hadn't done before. And I think that intimacy and that vulnerability that I got to work on at Guiding Light allowed me to play a vulnerable character on stage. I've taken that experience of doing Guiding Light into every other piece of stage work that I've done. And you wouldn't think necessarily that they would be particularly connected.
Yeah.
But then you see like Kim and Robert, they're doing stage work all the time. And they know how to balance that performance element of being on stage with also that internal work that has to happen as an actor, and you have to become a different human being.
I know. Speaking of Kim, I had this random thought before we went live that you and Kim doing a cabaret show together would be incredible and off the charts. Because I don't know if you've ever seen, she used to do that. She used to do them all the time. She is phenomenal. She hasn't done it in a long time.
I would love to do something with her.
I'm going to say it.
We have a lot of the same, what is the word? Vibe, chutzpah. We in terms, it was like perfect that I played her daughter. Just our energy is very similar. We have a fight in us. And we also tend to go to the comedic place. So even though she's this incredible dramatic actor, she always made me laugh on set.
Correct. Everything was a joke. I watched some of your episodic things just before this, like this week. And you're so true to that, because just the way you approach, you just have that what I think Kim always possessed in in a scene that was fun, where the comedy came out. You literally go, balls to the wall, if I could say the expression. You know what I mean? Like you just totally do. One of our fans, Patrick, asked, did you get to meet John Waters?
I did get to meet John. So John was actually very much involved in the process of Hairspray. And even though we opened the show 18 years ago, I actually was developing this show 20 years ago. So I was 19 when we did the very first reading. We only had one act, and John was there. And John was at every reading. And I became close with John, and I get a Christmas card from John. It's one year I got an ornament with a roach in it.
Yeah,
because it's John Waters.
Totally.
And what was great is, and I was fawning over him because I was the 8-year-old that watched the Hairspray Ricki Lake movie, and I loved Crybaby too. And I'm not sure my mom was fully aware of the fact that I was watching, John Waters, and I was drawn to like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. This is the stuff I was interested in watching. I just eat my TV dinner on a summer day and, watch John Waters. So I was like, when I met him, I was like, I love you. And actually, so it's a kind of a wild group, Hairspray. And there was we always had parties, lots of parties. And we went to one of the creative person's houses. We were all having a good time together. Everybody's dancing, music's on after rehearsals or a show or something. And there was a plate of cookies on the table. And John is just eating them.
Jesus.
And about an hour goes by, and somebody makes mention that those were pot cookies.
So funny.
And yeah.
I just realized I somehow, and I don't know if it was because it was after the Emmys, but I was at a party at, I want to say, Mark Shaman's apartment after the Emmys. Might have been at the same time as Hairspray. Sarah Jessica and Matthew Broderick were there. I think Hogan Sheffer. I might have gotten invited because Hogan Sheffer, who was the head writer at As the World Turns, was there. My brain just rememmed you.
So that might have been the same night.
It might have been. I don't think I picked up one of those cookies. It was quite an apartment and quite a party.
Yeah, there were many parties. Somehow, always like at some point, Matthew Broderick and Sarah Jessica and Nathan Lane walked in.
Yeah, that's
and of
crazy.
course, I was the youngest adult in the cast. And so I'm just sort of like wide-eyed at everything. And I was a little innocent too. You know,
You might have been the reason. I mean, you might have invited some guiding light people. I really can't remember. I have no clue. What do you remember about hearing your name called for a Tony nomination for Legally Blonde? That must have been something.
I felt like am I alive? You know, like
Who told you? Did you watch?
I listened. So I wasn't going to, right? Because it was early in the morning and I had a show the night before and I was like, and then I was like, okay, I'll listen. I'm up. And I listened, and when I heard my name, it was actually one of the very first nominations that they listed. And I think I was the first name. And I was paralyzed with shock. And then I just started screaming. And then I started jumping around my room. Because for me, Academy Award, Emmy, all that, Tony was the thing. You know, and when you grow up in theater and you're like, oh my God, that thing. And but then I also know there's also such great work that doesn't get nominated. Mm-hmm. And what happened is I got nominated, but my show didn't. And so then it was like sad. So,
right.
So it's like everyone in the cast got nominated, the the choreographer, the director, everything. The show didn't get nominated. And
there's never a rhyme or reason.
Yeah. So, but it was exciting, of course.
But it had to mean a lot. I mean, you know, your first lead, you know, and taking on a lead, it's a nice pat on the back for all the hard work.
Yes.
And well deserved.
Thank you.
And I remember the nice compliment Ms. Zimmer gave you when you did the show with the Maras about playing Glenda, where she said you were a better Glenda than Ms. Chenoweth.
Well, I don't agree, but I appreciate the compliment.
Did you love that role?
I did love that role. And you know, Kristen Chenoweth really created that role. And I think that that role isn't necessarily as well written as Elphaba. So there was a lot to sort of be determined by the actor playing, a lot of stuff that had to happen that wasn't on the page. And but you could never tell that watching her. But when I played the part and I realized, oh wow, there's a lot of blanks to fill here. There's a lot of funny that needs to be created by the person playing it. And I think what I really liked playing about Glinda, and I guess my version of that, of playing her, was to go into the sort of more internal place of Glinda as to why she needed to be popular and why she turned her back on her friend and how she was reckoning with all of that and what was going on internally as she was standing on the podium. And there was a sadness that happens in the second act that I sort of embodied and incorporated into her.
Yeah, well, that song "For Good" just kills me every time. Kills me every time.
Can't ever get through it. Can't get through
song. One of my absolute favorites of all time. It's really beautiful. Beautiful. Well, speaking of music and beautiful music, let's talk about Women of Tomorrow, which truly is the perfect soundtrack to our current women's movement. And the album's due in 2021, right?
2021, yeah.
2021. So. Because I read the liner notes, share, you know, where you truly got the inspiration to put this album with all tracks dedicated to various issues that women are dealing with.
Yeah, I think I was again, like I was overwhelmed by the double standard in the 2016 presidential election. And sort of made aware of the type of scrutiny that a woman gets versus a man. And then again, we have this rising of a women's movement, which is to say, hey, you know, sexist comments are no longer appropriate. And we have to fight for a lot of the rights that we have. And so out of that was the women's movement. And then we have the Me Too movement. And then all in that time, I had already conceived of doing an album that would represent this. And at first it became a concert that I did at the town hall in New York City called the Double Standards, where two singers came together to do a duet on a jazz standard, double standards. And
but talk about that, because you posted after the election and people reached out to women or reached out on social media.
I said, you know, I feel like I've been living under a rock. I wasn't aware of the insane sexism. I thought I had felt always very empowered. My mom had told me the sky was the limit. And then of course I'm out in the world and I start to hit the glass ceiling and go, oh, it's there. It does exist. And then seeing it also, you know, for whatever anybody wants to say about Hillary, she definitely was qualified. And we didn't talk about that as much as we talked about the suit she was wearing, whether she was smiling enough, her cackle, you know, things that had nothing to do whether she was qualified. But we didn't really talk about the qualifications of the other guy who just out there said, I don't care about grabbing.
She was one of our most qualified candidates, I think, almost ever, if you really paid attention to what that candidate knew in terms of smarts.
Right.
You know.
And so to me, whatever you want to feel about her, that's fine. You can't take away from the fact that she was qualified. And that bothered me. And as along with other people. So I put out on my Instagram, I'm going to do an album called Double Standards. Two singers come together to sing a jazz standard, and all the money is going to go to female empowerment and women's rights. And I mean, I had so many people going, I'm in. I had men saying Harvey Fierstein, not to Harvey Weinstein, was like, I'm in, you know, and all these people were saying they were in. And then it became then I had a friend of mine saying, this is a concert, you know, you need to do so the concert was almost like a women's march, except for a concert. And, you know, my motto was like, we can march, but you ain't heard nothing till you hear us sing. And so it was awesome. It was like Sarah Bareilles and Ingrid Michaelson and Danae Benton and Jessie Mueller from Broadway and Anna Gastower from SNL, Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell did hilarious 10-minute stand-up that would make you pee. It was so funny. And even my very conservative Republican father-in-law was like, she's hilarious. You know, at the end of it, he was like, my father-in-law was like, women, yeah. It was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. And, you know, it was very empowering. And in that, we talked about different historical moments, you know, including it wasn't until 1974 that women couldn't apply for a credit card. Apply for a credit card without the permission of their husband or their father. And
that's why the credit cards before 74 always had Mrs. Alan Locher, or, you know, it couldn't have their name by themselves. Right.
Which is, you know, that goes along with, okay, why is that happening? Because women were not in the workforce, because women were not given or allowed to enter fields where they were actually making decent money. They were in sort of secretarial positions and positions that didn't have as much power, that didn't have equal pay. The Equal Pay Act, not quite sure when that came around, but obviously we're still working on that. But, you know, you
mentioned that in the liner notes, don't you? Right? There's something you weren't given equal pay for. Am I correct?
Right. I wasn't paid equally to my male co-stars.
Yeah.
It's in my bio.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's true.
Right. You work just as hard as Yes.
Plus, as women, we have a second shift when we get home. We have a whole other shift of work that is sort of this silent responsibilities of duties that we're doing, whether that has to do with the shopping or the cooking or the cleaning or the raising of the kids. There are some of these sort of assumed responsibilities. Now, as a woman, I am the only one who can nurse my child. My husband does not lactate. So just by nature, we have these responsibilities that most women want to do, right? But as we're also entering this workforce where we want to be able to be independent enough to have a credit card and pay our own bills, we sort of struggle with this internal and external pull with like, okay, I'm working, I'm in the field, I've got a seat at the table, but I also got to be home by this time so that I can prepare dinner, so that I can do these number of things. And it's a hard balance, and our system isn't set up yet to accommodate it. Mm-hmm. We're getting close. That's why things like universal pre-K would be really helpful to parents. But I'll tell you right now, having toddler at home, he is really tired of his parents. He really needs to be around the kids.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
You didn't release Double Standards though, right?
No, Double Standard, well, we streamed it. Did we stream it? I actually don't think we did stream it. After the concert happened, I became so much more aware of different historical facts because of writing those in the introductions. But also I really then was like, now I have to make this album. And I had the choice of doing covers, standards, and having two women sing on them. And what ended up happening is like, I wanted to write original songs that we actually dealing with and targeting these issues. I just did them in a style that sounded like a jazz standard.
And it's incredible.
So it's the contrast of sound of a time period where women were in not great positions of power, right? 1950s sound with a very empowered sentiment to talk about these issues. And each song dives into a different issue that women are facing today.
How did you pick your writing partner, Shay?
So Shay was always a good friend of mine, and she's a songwriter.
And it's Shay Carter. So I said the full name. Shay Carter.
She's a singer. She was in a band, and I had seen her perform, and I thought she was great. But we have the type of friendship. So I met Shay because her ex-boyfriend I knew growing up as an actor, as like a child actor, and he, still an actor, did a show on TBS when my husband was an executive there. And so we kind of like reconnected, and he had Shay, this woman is his girlfriend, and she and I ended up bonding in a way like I hadn't bonded with a woman in a while, in terms of every time we had a conversation, we always talk about these very dense topics like why we're created, or the cosmos, or the massive subjects, huge subjects. She and I, just on our own, the two guys would be talking about whatever else, and she and I were going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I realized, we both like to go down rabbit holes. We don't have a lot of opportunity with other people we could do that with. And so our friendship formed based on that. And when I told her I wanted to do this album, she was like, but did you know about this issue? And did you know about that? And did you hear about this thing? Blah, 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 blah. And she was just full of knowledge on these topics, and we would go down, again, rabbit holes about them. And she's one of those people that's very fair and balanced in terms of the way she views the world, and she can see all the sides. And that's a really important thing when you are attacking these issues, is to understand every side of the issue so that you're right.
Talk about some of the issues, just, name them that you cover in the songs.
There's a song called Money Ho, which is about equal pay.
Love it.
And it sounds like, a little bit of like Andrew's Sisters meets a hip hop beat. And there's a song called Sick of Saying Sorry, which is about how much women apologize. I mean, we apologize so much. Women should count how many times they say that they are sorry. We say sorry before we speak. We go, oh, sorry, I have a question. Sorry. Like someone hits us on the way out of a store and we say sorry. Because, and I think we do this for a couple of reasons. We do this because we're also the peacemakers, and we also want everybody, we want to be likable. So instead of being like, hey, why'd you hit me with the door? We're like, sorry, don't want a problem. I want to keep the peace. That's one of the reasons. But also historically, women's voices. So I'm going to tell you a little fun fact. The earliest known law code in 2400 BC Mesopotamia stated, if a woman speaks out of turn, her teeth will be smashed by a brick.
Wow.
So if you didn't want to be toothless,
you kept your mouth shut.
You kept your mouth shut. So what do you do over centuries, thousands of years, centuries? You apologize to make sure you're not punished. And I'm even telling, in the beginning of the formation of the colonies, there were practices used that if a woman was a naggy, gossipy, spoke out of turn, said something to her husband, he would have the right to call the authority of the town and put the woman put his wife in an iron shield, basically an iron face mask that had a tongue plate. And she would be put in this harness and she would be paraded through town, and, you know, people would bang on pots and pans, and it was like, repent, repent. I mean, crazy stuff. And this is all along, like any woman that was sort of vocal was considered, is she a witch? This was in that sort of time period. But it was, again, this is why culturally, why we have this subconscious years and years and years, don't speak out of turn, act like a lady. Speak when you're spoken to. So of course we say we're sorry. It's not really our fault. It's not, you know, we just do. We just now have to be aware of the fact that we say we're sorry when we're not. Sorry at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I told you, American Girl, digital disease, calling all lost boys. Talk about that, the meaning of that.
So
I thought that was interesting.
Calling all lost boys is about, so right now, especially with the women's movement and especially with Me Too, the pendulum has swung the other way in terms of men getting away with certain comments. And we live very much in a cancel culture right now, which is scary. So the song is acknowledging, yes, I know the pendulum has swung the other way, and now you don't know what to do. You don't know what the rules are.
You don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say. You don't know what you can say. You're lost. So this is calling all lost boys. And we know, I know, you raised that way. Your father didn't teach you. Maybe your mother didn't even speak up for herself. These are things that I am aware of. Not all feminists are aware, but I'm aware of the changing of the tide and the fact that men they need a new rule book, and the rule book hasn't been written. They don't have time. You know, there hasn't been enough time to like get a new sense of training of how to treat women and what not to say and what not to do, and, you know, those types of things, right? So I am acknowledging that in this song, and the song is from the perspective of the mother. So it's a lullaby to men from their moms saying, if you don't know, how do you treat your mom? Just treat her like you treat your mom. And then it's also about forgiveness. It's also about saying, we say, we stake our claim, but point no blame, so carry our flame. Won't you carry our flame? And the idea is, okay, you may not have done it all right your whole life. That's okay. But now that you know the difference, help me in this fight to my equality and my respect. And so that for Shay and I, not all women feel this way, but Shay and I definitely, we operate in a place of, we understand holistically the picture. You know, these ideas about women's roles and men's roles have been pervasive for thousands of years in society, and sexism has been too. So there's just a new standard that has been set. And I understand that not all men have had the time to figure out what those new set of rules are.
And sadly, nothing changes overnight. It is an education. It has to be learned. I mean, that's why this is really, I mean, I think you've provided a soundtrack for moms to like hand over to their girls and to their boys, you know, introducing music. And I told you there is a mind-blowing rendition that Laura does of Girls Just Want to Have Fun that will make the hair on your body just stand up. It's one of my, I've never heard anything like it, truly. It's so great. It's so great. And you're releasing it in October, right? To coincide with National Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
Yes, that's right. So
the video for that.
Right. So while the song itself was never written to be a song about domestic violence, did you know that Girls Just Want to Have Fun was written by a man?
Yeah, I didn't. I read that, and then the man's take and Cindy's take.
Yes.
And then, you know.
So his take was like, hey, we're lucky because girls just want to have fun and we can like get with them. And Cindy was like, I don't really like that. And she adjusted it, some of the lyrics. And it was like, he said, Daddy dear, we're the fortunate ones because girls, they want to have fun. And she would say, Mama dear, we're not the fortunate ones. Meaning we're being held back. We have all these responsibilities and we just want to have a good time and we're not allowed to. But when you slow this song down so that we do a very orchestral, like a very sad take of slightly haunting version of Girls Just Want to Have Fun done in a waltz. And
did we lose?
Oh, I'm here. Are you here?
Yeah. You froze, so I wasn't sure what happened. Okay. So you said it was done in a waltz.
Yeah. It was done in a waltz, and that line that you don't really pay attention to, that when Cindy is singing with so up tempo because it goes by so quickly, is some boys take a beautiful girl and hide her away from the rest of the world. I want to be the one who stands in the sun. Oh, girls just want to have fun. When you slow that down, it gets very vulnerable and sad. And so as I was thinking, like, how do we, as we're dealing with different issues, it's difficult to write a song about domestic violence. So instead we're using this song and creating a video which depicts a woman throughout the course of an abusive relationship through animation. So I'm singing it and then my world changes around me in animation.
Incredible. Is it possible, because Stephanie, one of the fans, asked, do you have a favorite song on the album? I mean, it's your whole baby, so I don't know that you could.
Yeah, right. It's hard. I mean, I think it's like, you know, some days I like this song and some days I like, it's like always the song you're in the middle of is your favorite.
Sure, yeah, when you're doing it, yeah.
I think the songs that, the rendition of Girls Just Want to Have Fun I have found is universally people are touched by. But an American Girl seems to be that way too. And then the one that is like, oh my God, this is my life, is Digital Disease.
Yeah, that's fun too.
People are like, oh my God, that is my life. You know?
It's so fun. Did you ever see Bette Midler's For the Boys?
Yes.
Movie?
Yes.
The music. Like,
yes.
I feel like every song on your album could be in that movie.
I take that as a great compliment, because when I was getting ready to write Get It Girl You Go, I was thinking, I want some hugging and some kissing and some loving. That was my sort of like, I want a song like this that feels like this and has this energy. And
well, that's a perfect introduction. Let's play the video.
Okay.
That's a perfect place to go right there. So let's do that.
The rest got a job, a flat, join the race. Never tell this woman she should know her place. Few years later, frames another degree, filling up her seek up getting vitamin D. The baby to the doc was almost late for the big presentation that would pave the way. Made some noise so that the boys they heard what she had to say. And dinner's on the table, quite a long ass day. For the baby girl, an airplane and a Santa doll. No agenda with your gender, gotta learn to do it all. Hey, hey, she came to play. Oh, oh, get out of her way. And thank you, Mama.
That is just too much. And I just love that that's what you said, that, you know, you had that song in your head from, you know, because it really just, I started thinking of the,
Now you're hearing it, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, I totally hear the whole thing. You had to change, you know, because of COVID, you had to change how you were going to, you know, record this, how you were going to do the video. Talk about the video. I mean, you have all of the women candidates running for office involved. You know, talk about the concept.
So the original idea was that Anika, Shoshana, and I were going to be dressed up in different time periods as women in the last 100 years as a celebration of how far we had come. So you'd see us like in the 20s as suffragists, and then you'd see us like as like Rosie the Riveter, and then you would see us in like 50s housewife vibes, and then you'd see us in the 60s like, you know, hippie, and then you see us in the 70s, you know. So we were going to go up the decades, and that was going to be what the video was. And then, of course, when COVID happened and nobody could be with anybody else, I had to reconceptualize the entire idea. And so what we did instead was, all right, we're going to be in one outfit. We're going to use footage that depicts historical events that have happened in the last 100 years, interspersed with us performing, and add animation on top of our movements. So I sort of choreographed this thing with Shay, like the movements were this and this and this, this, and this. And I did it in front of a pop-up green screen that I got on Amazon. I did it, then my parts, then I sanitized it, sent it on over to the other girls. They had the videos from me on what the dance moves were. And then I was on Zoom saying, okay, no, wait, do that again, or back up, or one more take, but the arm is like this. And then we would send all that footage to the editor to put it together and make it appear as if we were together. And then it was like, let me tell you, trying to track the candidates. Okay, oh wait, this candidate lost the primary, they're out of the video. And then it was like, do we include the female presidential candidates that were running for the Democratic Party? And it was kind of like, yes. And then it was like, do we include? And so there was always this sort of like head scratch about having them. And we had footage originally of them from their campaign videos. But the problem was that with that is that I didn't have permission to use it. And so that was going to be too hard. But I could use like a Shutterstock photo,
Gotcha.
right? So I I could use official campaign photo. And so we included them in that way by adding animation around them as well and putting them in bubbles. And then I thought, okay, there's an element of this song that has to do with women supporting other women and women lifting other women up. And so I had my friends make these cameos, and a lot of my friends are fairly well known. Not a lot of my friends, but the friends that I asked who are performers are fairly well known.
Name some. Brittany Snow. Some Guiding Lights, Brittany Snow. Who else? Because I know there's a few of them in there.
Yes, and Brittany Snow is my favorite because she's literally dyeing her hair while she's singing it, and it just cracks me up. Anna Camp, who is in Pitch Perfect, and also Chrissy Fit, who is in Pitch Perfect, and then obviously Shoshana Bean and Anika Noni Rose are the main singers with me, and then Marissa
and Shoshana was in Hairspray with you, right?
Shoshana was in Hairspray with me, and we go way back. She's like a sister to me, and
for anyone who doesn't know, Anika Noni Rose was in Dreamgirls. For anyone who doesn't. And many other things, but
Dreamgirls, and
very well known for that.
And she's the voice of
the
very first ever African American Disney princess in Princess and the Frog. So she's also in so many other shows and things. She's just absolutely incredible, Tony winner, and so then we have like other cameos from Carrie Butler and Marissa Winokur, who was also in Hairspray with me, Tanya Pinkins, a woman named Natalie Z, who was in Passions, the soap opera, but now she's sort of gone on to do a bunch of other television work. She and I were in a film together called The F It List, which is on Netflix, and but she made an appearance, and some of the cast of Mean Girls, and so it's a real Samantha Bee from Full Frontal and Cecily Strong from SNL. So they're all making these different cameos at different lyrics and popping up.
The editor and the animator, I mean, have done a phenomenal job of putting that video together.
I think the animator the editor did not realize what I was asking her to do. And by the way, I don't think I realized what I was asking her to do. It was such an undertaking with all this footage and figuring out where it goes. And it was truly a labor of love. It was lots of late nights. And then right in the middle of it, her computer crashed. We lost.
I wanted you to repeat that because you said it quickly, and I want to make sure people heard. But it was a female editor, which I love.
Yes.
So pointing that out that you were
female animator, female producer, and then in the videos that we've shot, a female director of photography, female props, female costumes, female grip.
Well done.
Everybody was, by the way, everybody is female. And very diverse group of people as well. So, and I'd like to, keep it that way. Sometimes it is harder in this particular field to find in fields of behind the scenes, female crew. They're harder to find.
And you released the video on the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement, right?
Right. The first ratification of the 19th Amendment was August 19th. Now today is Women's Equality Day.
Yeah.
And I think this was the day that it was official that women could vote. I say women because not all women were allowed. Women of color were not allowed to vote. It was just for white women at the time because we were still dealing with segregation and those issues. And it wasn't until 1965 that women of color got the vote. And which is ironic because the women's suffrage movement was born out of the abolitionist movement. The same people that were in that fight, So it was Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Frederick Douglass who, in Seneca Falls in 1848, proposed at the first ever women's rights convention that ever existed that women should have the right to vote. And what's sad about it is there was a lot of Black suffragists, and as they proposed these ideas in areas of the South, they put the kibosh on women of color getting the vote. So that's a very unfortunate thing, but and it's hard. It's a very bittersweet anniversary to celebrate.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a lot of plans? Like the girls just want to have fun with the release of that one. Is there a song after that you?
Yeah. So our plan is after that we will release American Girl towards the end of January around the Women's March.
Great.
And I believe for Women's History Month, we are looking at Sorry, sick of saying sorry. And we definitely, it's going to be like a trickle. Now, if you go and you get It Girl You Go on either iTunes or Spotify, or like you add it to your playlist, you'll be notified about every other song that's coming out. And also on YouTube, if you follow me, you'll also be notified.
And all the info's on Laura's website, so you can get all of Spotify and all of those things as well. And to talk about what you're doing with the Broadway Podcast Network. So
as a companion piece to the album, I'm doing a podcast that essentially we play the song and then we go into the history of the subject matter of the song. So like I did with you on Sick of Saying Sorry and Women's Voices, it would be very similar. So with Get It Girl You Go, we're just about to do that. And our guest for that show is going to be a woman who is actually running this year for Senate in 2020, which is Amy McGrath, who's running against Mitch McConnell. And she is so interesting because she was the first female to fly a combat mission in an FA-18 as a fighter jet pilot ever. Yeah. And she also taught Homeland Security at the Naval Academy. She's really like an interesting woman. And the song is about, breaking barriers and not necessarily conforming to gender roles. And
I thought what's also interesting about Amy is that she's a Democrat and married to a Republican.
Yes.
Where you can live in a marriage and have differences of opinions and get along,
when I met my husband, my husband was registered Republican when we met. And I was not. Obviously, but we've found the common ground. And what's nice is like we're devil's advocates to each other. What I noticed when I spoke to Amy about this particular topic is how do you have a relationship with someone, an intimate relationship with someone who has this different set of political ideas and ideals. And she said, first, I'm an American. First, her husband's in the military too. He's an American. There are things like raising the minimum wage that are good for everybody. There are things about lowering the cost of diabetes medication that is good for everybody. And we need to be able to have these conversations. Unfortunately, it is this bipartisanship it's tearing us apart. I
completely agree.
And
sad.
Here's the thing, when we see each other and we're face to face, I look at my stepfather. My stepfather couldn't be more to the right conservative, but I love him. I have never met anybody who would, give someone the shirt off his back like my stepfather. but we don't agree on a lot of issues. So what we try to focus on is what we do like about each other and the things that we do agree with. And I know for him, yeah, medications being cheaper, that would really help. The copays that my parents have to pay for their medical bills are crazy. So we do have to just think like, okay, what is actually good for us? And
all of us.
yes,
all
of
of
us.
Yeah,
all of
it's
us.
true.
And I think that the mistake is, like, I saw a lot of comments being made, around the Democratic convention and the Republican convention, and it is to attack based on some very superficial things, as opposed to let's talk about the issues and have an open dialogue. We're not going to get anywhere just like throwing out attacks of like, or she looks like she's on drugs. Like,
right.
That isn't going to work.
Right.
Sorry.
Nope.
Or like, Melania's dressed like Fidel Castro. That's not going to get us anywhere.
Right.
I know. Interesting choice. But again, let's talk about what she talked about, not what she's wearing.
Right. It should always be what they're talking about and their actions. On both sides. It's what's being said, the facts, the truth, and what's going to help all of us as Americans. So you've mentioned Tom a few times. How did you meet your husband?
So I'm through a mutual friend. I did this pilot with this producer. Her name is Michelle. And at the time I was living in Nashville, because I lived in Nashville for 5 years and all I did was write music all the time. And I was in LA because I was working, I think, on How I Met Your Mother at the time. And I had planned to have coffee with her. And so where we were, Tom walked in because he had a meeting there and she knew him. So she was like, hey, good to see you. Come over. Here's my friend. Nice. We chatted for a little while. Then he went and had his meeting. And then he came back out to talk to us some more. And then he sent her a note and was like, tell me about the girl. And then, of course, she sends him like comedy videos of mine. She sends him like all of this work stuff because he's in comedy and I was in comedy. And she thought, oh, you could work well together. Like, I think he could be somebody would be interesting for you to work with. And I was like, okay, cool. So she connected us by email and I responded and it bounced back. Like mailer demon, Yeah. Right. And I was like, hey, it didn't work. She's like, I don't know what's wrong. So 2 months goes by. I have this idea I'm taking out and I'm pitching. And my agent says, it'd be really good for that, this company, Carousel. And I was like, oh, I met a guy that works there. And she was like, who? Because there's only one guy that's working there. And I said, oh, yeah, him. And I told her the story of trying to get connected and it didn't work out. And she's like, oh, we represent them. We have his email. And we realized what happened was Tom spells his name T-H-O-M.
And you put T-O-M.
My friend put T-O-M.
So funny.
So we never got the email. So I sent him a note and I was like, I don't know if you remember me, but, I was the girl with Michelle Weissler and, was talking about, my obsession with hookers at the Four Seasons.
So funny. And he's a Jersey boy like me, right?
He's a Jersey boy. He's from Roselle Park. But so then we connected and it ended up being like we went back and forth on email and we kind of started this sort of flirtation. He was so funny. I knew he was funny when I met him, but then his emails were so funny. Like I was laughing out loud. And that is like the way to my heart. You make me laugh. I'm like, and for us, so I feel like people who have a good sense of humor are connected to the truth because what makes us laugh is a revealing of the truth. And
Interesting. I never knew laughter was so important in a relationship. And it's one of my favorite things about my relationship with I could not be in a good mood and he'll, he knows to make me laugh. And it really is everything. So hearing you say it, and I believe it. I really didn't realize.
And I love the element of surprise. Well, it's really hard to be surprised when you've been in a relationship with someone for 9 years or longer, right? Like really hard. But he still surprises me because his humor is surprising. And that's really, I'm not sure not that I'm married, I'm not planning on getting in another relationship, but I often think about, if I don't often, but I sometimes think about if I were back on the dating scene, I think I'd really struggle because I've been fully entertained and laughing and surprised. And I think prior relationships, as great as some of them were just didn't have that extra little bit of bite that
I didn't know. Like it's a really interesting thing, right? Like just how it could just boom and you're on the floor.
Yeah.
Together.
He will always rehash our arguments through jokes after they happen. And you would think, oh, that sounds horrible, but it takes all the tension out. And it makes the argument like kind of dissolve when you joke about it. Yeah.
That's nice. And how's Huck doing?
He's good. He's 15 months now. He is, I don't know if he was fully running, he's like running around now.
Wow.
And he's definitely, he has some new words. He speaks his own language. Some of which sounds like English. I recognize mama, dada.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Dog, up, out. And recently he started saying be. And I was like, what is be? I'm like, are you saying beer? And then I realized, oh, he's saying bear.
Oh, okay.
Be.
That's so funny. What was it like hearing mama for the first time?
Just so here's the thing. He said dada first, and then he started to mumble mama. And then for a while, he just stopped saying it. So everything was dada, I was dada, everything was dada. And actually just recently, he started like looking at me and going, mama. And then one day I was in the back seat with him in his car seat because he was upset. And this was like 2 weeks ago. And he takes his hand and he goes on my face and he goes, mama.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
I
don't need
dead right there. Yeah, that's it. I doubt you have much time for this, but do you have any time for guilty television pleasure?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that is, we just my husband and I find things to binge. We have recently watched Alone.
Never heard. What is that on?
Oh, what is it on? I mean, I'm watching it on
I'll
Netflix,
look it up.
I think.
Okay.
Because it's been on for a while. It's essentially these people that are survivalists that go out into the wilderness. There's like 10 people dropped into the wilderness, and the person who wins is the person who's able to stay out the longest. And they have like a backpack with supplies in it. Like they can only have 10 or 12 items that they can bring. And they're given a tarp, and they're given some bear spray and some things like that. And then they have to build a shelter. They have to find food, and they're totally isolated and alone.
Oh, wow.
And it is fascinating. And then they compete, and these people, like, you see them, they're like lost 25 pounds. One person lost 1/4 of their body weight. And it's just crazy. And it also makes you think of like how, the comforts of home, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even think twice about opening the refrigerator and grabbing food, and it's just so easy for us. But like our ancestors were like going days without food and, not being able to hunt or catch fish, or you think about how the implementation of farming changed everything for people. But I think it's a great show. That, and I watched Mrs. America.
Yeah, it was so well done. I mean, talk about a cast, huh?
Oh my God, so good. I loved how that show went into investigate every woman that was a part of that women's movement. Yeah, their point of view. I thought it was really interesting. And my husband loves Vikings, so we watched the Vikings. We also watched the
Last Kingdom. We literally binged that in probably about a week. I loved it, and I hear because we love that we have to do Viking.
Yeah.
Viking?
Yeah, Vikings. And then Outlander.
Yeah, but somebody else just said that yesterday. But Last Kingdom, I was blown away because a friend had told me for a while. Blown away. Loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, and that guy is so hot.
Yeah. I want him and Bayorka as guests because I just loved their relationship.
Oh, it was such a great relationship. Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it so much. You've been in so many episodic shows. Uhtred, son of Uhtred.
Son of Uhtred and Bevenber.
It's great. My husband looked him up and found out that he's German because he said that because my husband has a very good friend who lives in Germany, and he always thought that he heard sort of a slight German, and he looked it up, and he is from Germany.
Wow,
isn't that wild?
What ear your husband has.
I know. I was shocked. Yeah, crazy. Wow. Because he doesn't sound to me at all. To you? He doesn't sound German at all.
No.
But you've done so many. Do you have a favorite of your nighttime shows? I mean, Perfect Harmony, Heart of Dixie, How I Met Your Mother, Anger Management. And then you've done, just day parts, AJ and the Queen, Fuller House, which was hysterical.
I love them all. I definitely really enjoyed Heart of Dixie and Perfect Harmony as being a recurring character on those shows. And I think it was, first of all, the vibe on the set was just awesome, but there's also a lot of musical elements on I was always singing on Heart of Dixie, but there was always a lot of musical theater people on that show. And it was a great group of people, and I remained close to them. 2 days ago was Rachel Bilson's birthday. We're all on a text with each other to say happy birthday, sending notes and pictures, and
one of the music guys. One of the music guys.
So I had Jeremy. Jeremy is our co-producer and co-writer on this album. He's our only man involved. He's the man besides my husband and son I can't live without. That's it. Jeremy, Tom, and Huck. That's it. And we met there because I was always singing on the show. And I would go to Jeremy's studio and record, and he was like, you got a great voice. I got all these things I'm working on. And I'm like, I need someone who can produce like you. And I would notice that he would be building all of these tracks. You go into a studio and there's all these horns and mandolins and guitars, and he plays all of them. Wow. And piano, and he plays everything. And he's just a wonder as an orchestrator and a producer and an engineer. And so we had begun developing a relationship after that, and we started writing other music together and doing these sort of covers of heavy metal songs that sounded like Doris Day, or we would do bluegrass covers of currently trending pop songs. And from there, when I realized I was going to do this, I already knew what he was capable of. And I knew that he could nail this style. And he's just so inventive. And anyways, wonderful. So a lot came from that Heart of Dixie, obviously.
Yeah.
And then Perfect Harmony was very similar. It's set in the South. It was set in Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky. The cast of that show, a lot of musical theater people. Bradley Whitford is hilarious and awesome. Anna Camp is too. They're so professional. They show up prepared. There's not a lot of drama. It was fun. It was silly. We would get into hysterics. I hadn't had that feeling in a long time, and I just loved it. I also loved.
You're so lucky. You've worked with really lucky with some incredibly talented folks, and a talent yourself, my dear. And I can't thank you enough for doing this today.
Oh
I'm really excited.
So fun to catch up.
I'm really excited for everybody to hear this album, Women of Tomorrow, out in 2021. Go check out Get It Girl You Go. Mm-hmm. Download it. It's available on all the streaming, right?
Yes, all the streaming and TikTok.
And TikTok. Good. Well, maybe we'll do this in 2021. If I'm still doing this, we'll do it again when it comes out, because I can't wait for people to listen.
Yeah, I would love it. That sounds great.
And if you're coming back to Jersey, let me know.
We are.
You said that. Yeah, so let me know.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. And I will see you on Friday. Did you know Ryan Brown from Guiding Light? I don't know if you were there. Mm-mm. Ryan Brown, he played Bill Lewis. You were probably, what year did you leave?
2001.
Oh, you might have crossed. You played Bill Lewis, but I'm trying to think now.
Maybe. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, but you weren't involved. You were with, and Tony Santos was actually going to surprise you today. Jordi Villasuso was going to surprise you.
What happened?
But he's actually working, and he wasn't sure if the time would work out, but he really wanted to, and he says a big hello.
I would have passed out.
He really wanted to. He said yes immediately, and he was gonna stop by to say hello.
What an amazing surprise that would have been.
He's on the set of Young and the Restless today, so he I guess he couldn't break away. But next time
I have to tell you.
Oh, tell us.
So when I was on last time with Kim and Robert, and I had that huge reaction about Laura Wright and Wes Ramsey dating, they found out about it, and they went and watched it, and then she sent me a note like, just saw your reaction.
That's so great. It was perfect though, because you didn't know. It was a perfect reaction. That was so funny.
I love them both so much. And then, of course, I started cyber stalking them and looking at all like their cute pictures and where they went. I'm like, they're such a hot couple. They seem so happy. They travel all these places. They go to Halloween parties. I was like, oh, this is so great.
That's what. Yeah, I really. They look quite happy, and that's awesome. They both deserve it. Both deserve it. Love you.
Bye.
So good to see you. Bye. Thanks
Bye.
Everybody for tuning in, and have a great day. We'll see you on Friday.